Well, hey everyone, Carrie Beck here with Homeschool Coffee Break, where we help you stop the overwhelm so that you can actually have coffee break while you're homeschooling. Today, y'all are in for a treat. This is a friend of mine. Gosh, I don't even know how long we've known each other, but Bekki Saylor from Homeschool Olympians is here. Thank you so much for carving time out of your day today.
I am so excited to be here.
I know, seriously, we worked together a bunch, and then it's been several years since we haven't really worked as much together. So that's why when she said yes, I was like, yes, y'all need this. Y'all, I know so many of you are trying to get off that conveyor belt and off
Mm.
that checklist and blah, blah, blah. So we're going to talk all about that. How can you help your kids learn best and adapt that to your homeschool? So before we dive into the topic, Bekki, could you just tell people a little bit about yourself?
So, my husband and I have 5 sons. We've homeschooled over 25 years, and I've been a homeschool life coach for about 10 or 12 years now. All 5 of our kids are now out of the homeschool season. And so, where I sit today is with the hindsight of what worked, what didn't work, whether or not the kids have tripped and fallen over anything or whether they're thriving. And I'm thrilled to say that they're all thriving. And yeah, here I am 25 years later. My hair used to be dark brown. It is not dark brown anymore, but I love that with that comes a whole bunch of just clarity.
So true. You know, when we were homeschooling, a friend of mine kept telling me the proof is in the pudding. So look at people that have already gone before you. So,
Yeah.
and which Bekki has gone before y'all. She has a world, just so much experience. And think about it, boys, like 5 boys. My just, I only had one son, but I'm telling you, he would, and he would do school okay, but he didn't like to read or anything. He wanted to be outside dribbling the basketball.
Yep.
So I know you could relate.
Yes.
Well, well, let's talk about education, and then we'll talk about some more practical things. I'd love to know your view of education. I have a feeling it's something similar to, I tell people it's not a curriculum, that is not education. So, how would you sort of describe what education is to you so we can then move in and talk about how kids learn?
It's a great question. To me, education is about equipping children how to learn, and really it has almost nothing to do with what they learn. That in my experience, I've seen that there are 3 main stages of learning. There's the foundation stage where kids learn to read and they understand that numbers mean things. There's the launching stage where they leave the nest and they have a targeted goal and they're going in some direction. And then there's this beautiful in between stage that I call the flourishing and fun stage. And that's where the what doesn't matter as much as the how, the connection and the falling in love with learning. So for me, my philosophy on education is to equip kids with a foundation so that they can read. And it doesn't matter when, just that they read. And then to find things that they love and then wrap academic and life skills around those things that they love. And then you're becoming a spy, watching for what makes their hearts beat faster, what things they lean into. And then you lean into those things with them because then they're all in. They want to learn all about all the things. And you can wrap academics around any topic. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
I love that. But 2 things you said. One is it doesn't matter when you learn to read. And, these moms, and especially if you're trying to follow that little school model, they just become overwhelmed because they're so worried about it. I was talking to a guy, and I'm interviewing, and he said the average age is around 7 or 8, give or take 4 years. So I'm
Yep.
like, well, that's 4 to 12, and that's really, I was like, yes. So thank you for sharing that. Give yourself patience and your kids grace and patience. And then love the topic, love of learning.
Mhm.
There's just so much. Does it really matter what the topic is if they're going to write a paragraph?
Mm-mm.
No.
Nope.
See, we're so like-minded anyway.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about, like, what are some ideas? How do kids, you've alluded to this, but how would you say that kids learn best?
Well, each beautiful child is uniquely and wonderfully made. And the truth is that every single person learns slightly differently, and we have to be detectives and observers to figure out what how does my child operate. I had 5 kids, and it would have been so much easier, Carrie, if each one was the same, if they learned the same, if they liked the same things, but it just wasn't the case. I had visual learners, auditory learners, kinesthetic learners, and meaning some needed to see it, some needed to hear it, and some needed to do it, and they never were on the same page at the same time. So how kids learn or how to teach kids really needs to be tapped into how that child learns. My most challenging student was my youngest son, who didn't read till he was 10 and needs to be busy. He's the one that I had to teach how to crochet when he was 4 so that he would not drive his older brothers crazy. But for him, for instance, I couldn't just sit and expect him to read. I had to put his crocheted beard on him and have him ride his bicycle around in circles and then hold up a stop sign. And then we would read a paragraph or two, and then he would take off again. So I think mixing an understanding of who your child is, what makes them tick, and then some creativity, not falling into the trap that learning must mean textbook, must mean a grade, must mean, something tangible on paper, when learning is progress in a direction towards something. And even pulling it back, if I can like jump back further, one of the core things that really impacted our success in homeschool happened after a day where I was crying over curriculum, and I had 4 stacks of brand new curriculum in front of me. And I realized I couldn't do it. I couldn't teach 4 grades. I couldn't teach 4 kids 4 different things. And my husband encouraged me. He had us push the curriculum aside. And then he asked the most important question: by the time the kids graduate high school, what do we want them to know? And we took that question and boiled it down into what we call master homeschool goals. And everything that we do was filtered through those goals and they're simple, but we ran everything through them, that we would share our faith with our kids, because that was paramount for us. That it would be wrapped, it wouldn't just be an isolated box, but it would be in everything. That our kids would know their basic math facts, the arithmetic by the time they graduated high school, that they would be marinated in literature, and that by the time they graduate, they would be excellent communicators, both on paper and in front of people. And we filtered everything through there, everything through that. Does it fit our master homeschool goals? If it didn't and it wasn't fun, it was gone. So
I love that. It took us a little while, I mean, probably 3 or 4 years to get that vision of where we wanted to go. And,
mhm.
it's one thing that we teach our moms, but if you don't know where you're going, you're just, well, one, you'll hit it every time because you won't know what
Yep.
you're doing half the time.
Right.
And it can take that overwhelm. And it's just like, oh, that doesn't match. Oh, easy, put it in the no pile. And so I just
Exactly.
love that. You mentioned a comment earlier about being a detective of your
Mhm.
child or being a spy. Are
Yes.
there any sort of things that you would encourage moms to sort of look for to be able to tell how they learn best?
it, the first thing you have to do is you have to quiet your own mind, and you have to unbusy yourself. If you're so concerned with the checked boxes that are like math, English, writing, all those things, you won't be able to see it. You have to be able to detach from it and just watch your kids. So I would just say, using keen observation, that are they drawn towards images? Are they drawn towards words? Are they drawn towards having to do things with their hands? When they're young, under 7, it's hard to distinguish. They're just busy, right? And they're just busy. But kids naturally will reveal themselves if you're paying attention. I don't know if that was a complete answer, but that's the
Oh,
main
no,
thing.
that's
Okay.
Well, yeah, and you're really right. I mean, I only had three kids and they still all were different, as far as
Mhm.
the way that they were learning.
Mhm.
Is there like once you sort of put those little glasses, spy glasses on, and you start looking at how they're learning, do you have some tips for moms on what they can do to help those kids learn best, especially, you got one kid here and one kid here and they're completely different.
Well, again, it depends on how many kids, how outnumbered you are, and what season of life you're in, right? What season of homeschool. I think that if the one that's the one that trips up people the most, I think, is the one that needs to do it, the kinesthetic learner, the body learner. And, we have it in our mind that kids must sit at a table and do their studies. And especially our boys, stereotypical, if we can talk stereotypically, it doesn't work. And what happens is they fight and they break their pencil and they need a drink of water and they need to go to the bathroom. So with our busy kids, we need to think of outside the box things. For
Mm.
instance, my very kinesthetic learner, we almost never did math on paper. We did it standing at the back door with dry erase markers on the window. And so just the fact that he was standing and he was using a different type of utensil really tapped into what he needed to be a learner. So we did dry erase markers on the window. We used a whiteboard a lot in our home. We used sidewalk chalk and clay. A lot of, I'm sitting on his exercise ball. He did not sit in a normal chair. If he did, he would use it in ways that I didn't know you could use a chair that way. Sometimes I would tape paper underneath the table and have him write upside down. For the kinesthetic learners, you have to think of a way to activate their body, which then unlocks their brain. So uh, even just the simple act of replacing a chair with a bouncy ball is a big win. But anytime you can get away from the table is great. The visual learners kind of fall into the classic schoolroom type setting. You can stand at a whiteboard or they can stand at a whiteboard. The audio processors, just lots of conversation, lots of talking. Um, yeah, just simplify the paper and just lean into the way that the kids are wired is what I always did. So less is more.
Yes, yeah, that is so good because I hear these moms say, it takes us till 5 o'clock. I'm like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? And you got an 8-year-old, you know?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, I loved your idea about the whiteboard. And now that you were saying that, I sort of remember you sharing this at one of our events. This was several
Mhm.
years ago. But my sister teaches seventh grade in the public school. And one of the things she is doing this year is she has whiteboards all around the wall, and the
Yes.
kids have to go up to the whiteboard and do their work. And she was so excited I mean, she's always looking for like creative ways that she
Yep.
can still do her job, because
Yep.
she has kids that have a hard time learning. And so just hearing that, I thought, oh, yay, I'm gonna have to tell my sister that because it's been a successful endeavor for her. So, and she got a whole classroom of kids, but I
Because
love that.
you don't need to stockpile paper. What you want is for kids to exercise that they're learning. So, and what's the goal? I was just thinking through this because one of my homeschooling Olympian moms is asking, what about spelling? And as I'm thinking about this, I'm getting ready for the lesson. And the real core is it's not about spelling, it's about communication. And so
Mhm.
you can misspell and still communicate clearly. And you need to understand that the goal is not to be a perfect speller. The goal is to be an excellent communicator. And so and I was looking at the Declaration of Independence today. There are words in there that do not fit as perfectly spelled words because the focus on perfection is a new invention. The focus has always been on eloquent communication in the past. So anyway, finding creative ways to have your kids do the same thing. You look at a lesson for the objective. What's the point? What's the goal? And then and then close the book and think, can I think of a way to do this? And if you get stuck, then look at the book and see, oh, okay, maybe I can do it that way. So
That's so good. Okay, I'm thinking of two things. One, so we've talked about the kinesthetic person, the child, but you also said one of your goals is to be, I don't know if you use the right words, but something about being saturated in literature, something.
yes.
So how would you encourage a mom whose kid does not like to read a book and to
Yep.
eventually maybe be saturated with literature or to move to the point maybe at some point in time in their future like reading?
Well, it starts with just making space for reading in your home. We had, I would use the word mandated quiet time. Our kids graduated from naps to quiet time, which then rolled into book time. Everybody read in the afternoon. But we always had audiobooks going, and I highly recommend audiobooks for people. And you can put an audiobook on during lunch for 10 minutes and just have 10 minutes of audiobook every day, and that adds up over the course of a decade, right? So audiobooks, I had audiobooks playing in the car. We also made read aloud books together. I had an old-fashioned tape recorder, and this was even when they were out of style. So you go on Amazon, you get an old-fashioned tape recorder, you sit with your littles around you, you grab a book, and you read the book together. The kids make the ding sound to turn the page, and then when they go, they want to listen to that story again over and over and over again. And the fact that the baby's crying in the background and the dog is barking and they're hearing your voice, it'll still feel like you're all reading that story together over and over again. So creating your own read alouds, doing audiobooks, finding stories that resonate with the kids. I liked to find, I mean, I had boys, so we read books like Hatchet and Rascal and Where the Red Fern Grows and all those type of, like My Side of the Mountain. And I would always try to find a spot in the story that was climactic. And then I'd close the book. Oh, that's all for today. So my goal was to leave them hanging and begging for more. Over time, it needs to just become part of the family culture. The trick today, though, or the challenge, is that so many people spend so much time looking at videos and they're online that they just don't make space for books because it's slower. But so make a priority, start with audiobooks if it's hard, and then always turn it off or stop at an exciting spot and just celebrate the stories together. And you love the stories. You grab funny phrases and you'll be surprised how they weave in later. Oh, we just read that in this story. So yeah, you be excited about reading. So that
That's
helps.
so important because they're
Mm-hmm.
going to pick up on you. You're modeling something. You're either bored or you're excited about it. So
Exactly. Exactly.
that's so good. I was telling a story yesterday to some moms, and it was like we were reading The Little Britches for like 2 or 3 years. My husband would read those at night, and and we enjoyed it. And we weren't like every night perfect, but after about book 2 or 3, the kids are in the van. We're driving somewhere, and they start talking about the grandpa and
Yes.
how much they're like, we're so glad our grandpa doesn't act like that. And this is like spontaneous. And this was
Yes.
even my son who did not like to read until he was an adult. So you're really right, that shared experience. And I just love the idea of making a read aloud book together. I may have to do that with my grandkids.
You need to. It is such a great activity to do with your kids, and it's a precious keepsake to pull those cassette tapes out when they're older. They love it. They just love it.
Well, I'm excited. I'm gonna have to try that. We were all together a couple weeks ago, and actually, well, I wouldn't do this. I don't know if you know Betsy and Tacy. It's definitely a girl book, so you maybe never read it. There's like 4 or 5 of them at the turn of the century, and like around the 1900s, 20s, and they love this book. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, yeah, they're like now 4, 7, and 9. And I really thought the 9-year-old, she's like, no, I want to listen.
Oh,
So
I
whenever we
love it.
get together, we just read 2 more chapters. So
Oh, I love it.
anyway.
I love it.
I love those ideas. Okay, a couple things. and you've mentioned this. So when people have multiple kids, how
Mhm.
would you recommend them balancing or taking this idea and adapting these ideas to homeschool when you've got more than one kid?
Well, if you had asked me that 10 or 15 years late, 10 or 15 years ago, I think I would have said something different. I would have said, make space for each of the kids. The reality is that if you can just relax and enjoy your children and enjoy the process of learning right alongside with them, there's really no need for stressing out about trying to get it all in. A couple things though, I would always, if I was trying to teach, I would recommend teaching from the top down. So focusing on the older child first, because you have the least amount of time with them still in your nest. So that's the first thing. I've tried it both ways. And if you start with the youngers, the olders miss out. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that I think one of the pieces that most homeschoolers that are overwhelmed are missing is their routine, their flow in their day. They mistakenly believe that you can take laundry and cooking and meals and chores and errands and just sprinkle learning on top, academic learning on top, and have it be okay without making space for quiet time, read aloud time, arts and crafts. So one of the first things I teach my mamas is to, again, it's always that being a spy or a detective where you take a week or two and you observe your household and you're looking for the highs and the lows in your day, the rhythm that then you can weave academics in. Because you just don't need a lot in a day, but you do need a couple pockets to address academics. When my kids were little, I worked hard to establish not only routine, but they had independent time and they had nap times. And I used the nap time and quiet time of the littles to work on harder things with the olders. So I balanced it in that way.
That's so good. And you mentioned routine, and you're not using the word schedule.
Mm-mm.
Could you sort of just because I love what you're saying, and I think this is so encouraging. Because I people are always asking me, well, what kind of schedule did you use? And I just want to go, well, sort of like the morning was like this, and the lunch, and
Yes.
then we. So can
Yes.
you tell people a little bit what you mean by rhythm?
So rhythm and routine, you step back and you take the academic piece away. When do your kids go to bed at night? Routine starts at bedtime. When do your kids go to bed at night? Do you like that? If not, you start there. You button bedtime up first. Make sure that they get a nice sleep. My kids now, when does the household rise? What is your morning routine like? How does the flow of your day go? So, for instance, in my house, my kids were trained in love to stay in bed in their room till 7. If they got up, they could read a book quietly. They could play with something quiet, but they did not come out of the room till they were till it was 7. And then 7 o'clock, we'd all come out. It would be breakfast time. And during breakfast time, we would have family devotion. And then after breakfast, we would do the equivalent of similar to like a kindergarten circle time. We would do calendar, we would do days of the week, we would sing together, we would play. And then after that, the kids would break. I had a chart on my refrigerator where I had created stations. So I had a water play station, a puzzle station. It changed, but I had 4 or 5 blocks. The kids had magnets, and then I had a timer. And so the older kid got to choose which station he would start with, and then they would each put their magnet on there, and then it would go for 20 minutes, the timer would ding, and then they would clean up and they'd move on. So I had a kindergarten style routine throughout the day where it would be breakfast, then it would be, the circle time type stuff, then the kids would break into some kind of quiet but activity. It was either art or it was puzzles or it was Legos or something like that. Then it was broken up by a snack. We'd go outside and play. And so identifying how you want your day to go. So it's breakfast, activity, lunch, rest, activity, dinner, bedtime, right? So those big chunks of the day. But in there, you'll start to see, oh, after breakfast, everybody's happy. That would be a really good time to do something as a group. After that, everybody's ready to kind of do something. So what kinds of activities would I want my kids to do? One of the things I did again with a tape recorder was I made kindergarten tapes for my kindergartner when I had older kids. That kindergarten tape I made with him. We would sit, Micah, this is your morning time routine. What I want you, let's say your ABCs, let's count. Now let's lay the rope across the living room floor and I want you to walk heel toe, heel toe. And we would practice this routine for a few days. And then what that did later was I was able to say, I'm going to work with Thomas. You go do your tape. And he would go in the living room and he had my voice. We had already practiced it, all this stuff. Does that make sense? So
Oh, yes.
we just practiced routine. And that therein lies another secret is that you can never assume that just because you want your child to go sit and play with a bin of something, that that's what they're going to do. You have to train that in. So side by side with them, in this point in the day, you're going to sit with activities that mom's gives you, and then you sit there and you talk through it. You're going to play quietly until the timer goes off. And when the timer goes off, you'll have 2 more minutes to play and then it'll be time to clean up. And you practice these things for 3-5 days. And then you say, starting tomorrow, you get to do this all by yourself. So a piece that's missing is that you want your child to do something and you expect them to do it, but you haven't trained them what it looks like. So you
So
have
true.
to, and the lie is that you're going to think that they're going to fall behind because you need to spend a week or two training in a routine. But the reality is that you're giving yourself the gift of time in dividends in the end. So you train them at the beginning and then you you train right next to them and you do it and you practice and then you release them to it. And it's a beautiful training tip. That
That's so
really.
good. Just
Mhm.
listening to your day reminded me of a very similar. That's pretty much how we did our day,
Yep.
and so yeah, and so everyone's different. I had a friend, they homeschooled at night because she was a night person. I
Right.
could not even imagine doing that, but hey, that works for them, and so they can come up with their own routine like that. So
Right. And there's a key in there too. You have to do what's best for your family. But to me, whether you do a strict schedule or you do a routine or a flow, it has to be proactive. You have to start with the family routine first, the family schedule first, the bedtime first, right? You get the kids to bed at a certain time, you get up at a certain time. You have to regulate those big chunks in the day because then the sections that you can talk about math or read a story, you'll be able to see where they fit. Otherwise, you're homeschooling on top of dirty laundry and dirty dishes, and you forgot to pull dinner out, and the baby didn't get a nap, and chaos, chaos, chaos. Trying
oh
to
yeah,
avoid
definitely.
chaos. Yes.
This is so good. If our listeners, well, I know you have something for them, so could you tell us a little bit about that and then how they could connect with you?
So you can find me at A Better Way to Homeschool, which is my standing blog. And I said that first because I've been there forever. Our new site is Homeschooling Olympians. That's where our life coaching and the core of our new stuff is. What I have for everybody, and I just have my proof copy. I have a PDF copy of my husband and my new book, 13 Teeny Tiny Truth Bombs About Homeschool. And this book is from the perspective of 25 years of homeschooling, and they're nuggets that you can chew on and then just and they're not going to teach you how to do the quadratic equation or how to write a 5-paragraph essay, but instead it might be things on tips for communicating with your kids or strategically leaving holes in your routine or your life so that you can make space for fun. So I have a PDF copy for everybody of that. And then that will bring them right to me so they can look at other stuff there too.
That is so good. And wherever y'all are listening to this, just look either in the show notes or the description, and we'll have a link to that so you can use it. And is there a social media outlet that you use very much, or do you stay
I'm
away
at
from social?
No, I'm everywhere. You can find me on Facebook at A Better Way to Homeschool. You can find me on Instagram at A Better Way to Homeschool and on YouTube at A Better Way to Homeschool. I find that there's different pockets of different people on the different platforms, and I've been doing this long enough that there's just a lot of people that need to be set free, Carrie, of the homeschool from 8 to 5 is just not necessary. It's just not necessary. And just a word of encouragement, when I looked back on 25 years of homeschool, and I tried to create a video of what that looked like. And what I ended up seeing was that my husband and I spent 25 years hanging out with our boys.
Mhm.
So much family time, so many adventures. Our youngest didn't read till he was 10. All of the kids were delayed readers. And yet at the end, all five of them earned at least their associate's degrees. Four of them earned their associate's degrees with their high school diplomas. And they're all experts in their own fields. And so even with very little formal curriculum, even without a strict schedule, they're articulate, they're funny, they're kind, they're generous, they're responsible, diligent, all those things. So you can relax and still educate your kids in excellence. It's a beautiful journey.
I love that. I was going to ask you if you had anything else to say, but you just summed it all up right there, unless you have something else you wanted to close with. So,
The last thing that I want to close with is just a special thank you to you. One of the first things that the way I found you totally changed the way that I worked with my older kids as they got older. You shared in a workshop that one of the things that you've learned along the way is to encourage your kids in this way, where they say they want to do something. Instead of you telling them what to do, you ask the question, how can I help you get there? How can I help you? And that has just transformed my parenting and my homeschooling, because what I found was the fact that when you ask, how can I help you? They've already figured out what they want to do. They already have a lot of the pieces. They just need some of the help negotiating some of the things. So you guys are very blessed by this woman. She is filled with knowledge and wisdom. So eat up everything that she writes and produces, because it's gold.
oh, Becky, thank you. I had forgotten about that. I remember that is how we sort of met online, and we were
Yes.
speaking at the same conference. And
Yes.
I remember that because, yeah, I just think it's so important, especially with the older kids. Quit telling them what to do and let them
Yes.
start making some choices, and you
Yes.
walk with them.
Yes.
So, uh, Becky, thank you so much for carving time out of your day. I really appreciate it. And just all the nuggets. And I mean, I was taking notes. I'm like, ooh, this is good too. So we'll have all of the links down at the bottom and the resources that she recommended as well. So
Perfect.
thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. And I'm Carrie Beck with Homeschool Coffee Break. We'll talk to you next time.